Maurice Lenihan.
And where are we now, Maurice?
We're in the Old Drishane graveyard in Millstreet, County Cork.
Okay, and are you a Millstreet man?
I am indeed.
Born and bred?
Born and bred.
All right,
born and
okay.
bred,
All right.
Can't deny it.
And we're actually out, what are we, a mile or so outside Millstreet?
It's about a mile outside, and I suppose the basic premise really is that if you think about Millstreet, it's not an old town, it's not like Bandon, it's not like Mallow, it doesn't have that huge historical context, but the town was formed really by the influence of the three great estates. And firstly, the Drishane estate, the old Wallis estate, and prior to that, the McCarthy estate, and then the Leader estate in Mount Leader, and finally the McCarthy O'Leary estate in Cumlagan. So the town developed in the 1780s out of those estates, and that's why we're there, really,
Okay, and this has an older medieval origin, this graveyard.
It has.
So some of the older families were still burying out here even after the town was formed.
Oh, indeed they were, And I suppose if you start, you see we have the famous McCarthy tomb across the way, and the castle was built in 1450 by Dermot McCarthy.
Where's the castle now in relation
Castle's
to
just down here in Drishane.
Just across the field?
Just across the field,
okay.
And it's still there. You said the remnants of the tower is still there,
right.
And
built in
1450.
Okay.
1450. And you can see, well, we can't really know, I suppose, because they're obliterated really, but if we could read the headstone, there's an amount of history in it really in relation to the McCarthys, and there's reference to Donna McCarthy, who's reputedly attained the age of 122 years.
Okay, why don't we head down that way? And,
right.
We'll record. Like if I was a McCarthy and if I lived in Boston, or if I was in Adelaide, could my McCarthy's, is this like a McCarthy homeland?
It is. It's a huge homeland really for the McCarthys, you say. And basically, Dermot built it in 1450. We'll see the tower later on. And then you see it is shrouded in history after that, because the Wallis family acquired the property in the 1700s, but it's not very clear how they acquired it, A man called Henry Wallis from Ballyduff, County Waterford, arrived and took over the place. Now, there are two theories how he acquired the property, and in the Cork Archaeological Journal in 1936 and similarly in 1962 there were two articles, one by a Miss with a splendid name of Benedicta Bonaparte Wise, and she was actually a McCarthy, down the line, and she wrote that the Wallaces acquired the property under the Popery Acts, which meant that a Catholic couldn't hold.
So there was shenanigans involved.
There were shenanigans involved.
Right.
That was written in 1936. I have a copy of it actually. And then in 1962, a lady called Sheila Wallis, who was a member of the Wallis family, came out of the woodwork and hotly disputed that, saying that Henry Wallis from Ballyduff, County Waterford, had bought the property from the Hollow Sword Blade Company, who were an investment company. You have come across them anyway, and she claimed they owned the property and they bought it fairly and squarely, So it depends which version you like.
Yes.
The Wallaces were very progressive. They were hard on the tenants, but they were very progressive farmers. And the dominant man was John Richard Smith Wallace, who was there in the 1900s, and he was a JP, and he was a high sheriff for Cork as well.
Where are they buried then, Maurice?
I'll show you up in St Anna's later on, you know.
Lovely.
So it just shows to show you what, you know, their wealth really. When the Protestant church was built in 1798, I think, John Wallis financed the whole deal, right? Right. 100 years later, at nearly the turn of the century in 1900, the rectory house in Millstreet was built. Seán and Eilín would be very familiar with it, and Miss Kitty Cronin lives there now. And there was a collection at that stage by the Protestant community to build it, and it cost, I think, 1,500 or something like that. But the Wallis contribution had reduced to 50 quid, and so had so had Leader's contribution. So
Fortunes had changed.
you know, the winds of change had come, and the Land Acts had come. The Great Wyndham Land Act, you know, had swept away the power of the landlords and their glorious estates. The property then was seriously encumbered, and in about 1900 it was sold, and there was quite a long legal battle. I won't go into that. It was sold to a man called Patrick Stack. Now he bought the entire property, and he held the property until about 1909, and the Drishane nuns then acquired the property, and a French nun called Sister Claire Brignon and an Irish nun, Sister Matilda Foley, they set up the convent anyway, you know, and they stayed there until about 1992, I would think, or thereabouts. So that's the bones of it, really. The Wallis family were there for about 200 years. They controlled all this property. They controlled the town of Millstreet, about 3/4 of it. I'll show it to you later. And but the town tenants were able to buy their property then in the early 1900s, and that was the end of the Wallis family anyway.
That was a very revolutionary period, so
it was very, very, you know.
That the Irish families were able to.
They were really, you know.
Own the town of Millstreet.
Oh, it was really, it was, yeah. This is the Cotter family.
Right.
And they lived in a house called Flintfield House.
Where's that in relation to here?
It's only about 1.5 miles, you know, and as the crow flies, really, you know.
Right.
And it's a very fine house, actually, or it was anyway. When last I saw it, they lived there. They weren't landlords, actually, you know, but obviously they gave service to the British Army, you see.
All right. So
and
the
Major William Pomeroy Cotter and his nephew Charles Cotter.
Okay, 1833 and 1840.
1840.
So that probably went up in that decade of the 1840s.
Yeah. I would think it would be. It's a very fine. It's a magnificent. It's the finest headstone around anyway,
so,
you know.
So a lovely dress.
It is really. It is.
Yeah.
And has been preserved, really, you see, because a lot of the Cotter family still survive to this day in Millstreet.
Oh, do they?
I do, yeah.
Right.
And many of them have been buried here over the years, you know,
Okay.
even in recent times, you know. But certainly it's by far, you know, having gone through St Anna's and the churchyard and here, this is the finest.
Yes. Okay.
You know, really.
And what's unusual is that you can see the ironwork is still in place, the handles.
It is perfect,
for the
actually.
and there's also a little lock.
Yeah,
so
lock as well.
It
Like,
looks
yeah.
very much like that crypt is still in use.
Oh, it is really. It is.
The
Yeah.
high vault. And then just out of interest, alongside us, what you said, this is an orphan.
It's an
Box tomb.
the Oppen family lived in a house called Willowbrook House,
Okay.
which is about 2 miles from Millstreet, really. It's I don't think anybody lives in it now, actually, you know. It wasn't a big house, actually, you know, but it was said that the Arpin family, that they were related to William Arpin, who was a famous painter in around the First World War period.
Okay.
You know. Yeah.
It's a very interesting box tomb because it has a limestone top here, and then at the sides it's got what looks like a red sandstone.
Stone, yeah. Yeah.
And then with dressed limestone corners.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that a lot of people think maybe the coffin went inside in the box, but
Right.
it didn't.
Yeah.
So that's filled with mortar and with brick.
Right.
So that means the burial place is underneath it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a very fine example of that.
My name is Seán Radley. I'm the curator of Millstreet Museum here in County Cork, and you're most welcome, John Tierney, here to Millstreet, and particularly to this part of Millstreet, very historic Drishane cemetery here.
Yes, thank you for your kind welcome. We were just talking to Maurice Lenihan there, and he mentioned about the Cotters, and in your capacity in the museum you've met some of the Cotters' descendants.
Well, over the years, John, it's amazing the number of people that come to trace roots, and particularly roots that associate with some of the castles and some of the great houses of the area. We've had many people, for example, coming to inquire about Duhallow Castle, which would be quite close to Millstreet, and but we also have had people that associate with this particular tomb here. The Cotters, indeed, of Flintfield, and a group of visitors came some time ago, and it was clearly indicated that they were among the pioneering doctors in Australia many decades ago.
Right.
But it was just most interesting to meet with them, and the very fact that they were walking the walk and being in the land or in the location of their ancestors meant such a lot.
Yeah.
And of course they were able to visit where Flintfield House now stands, and they just wanted to get a feeling of the ambience of the area, and I think they got that.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Well, I think one of the fascinating aspects about this particular cemetery is that there are many different sections in it. There's what we consider the new section and the more historic older section here, but there's also a very special cemetery for the Sisters of the Infant Jesus just at the other side here, which is a very interesting.
Would you like to stroll over there and say a few words?
I think we will go over and now the order was called Les Dames de Saint-Maur, which would have been the Sisters of the Infant Jesus, although we always called the sisters here the Drishane Sisters.
Because we're in the townland of?
Exactly, Drishane itself.
Okay.
And of course we all recall the wonderful boarding school that was here, and the girls would very often on a Sunday they'd come through the town in their beautiful blue uniforms on their way back, usually to visit the Holy Well of Tubred. That was usually used to happen on a Sunday there. But here we are in this most amazing setting here, and this is the dedicated cemetery for the Sisters of the Infant Jesus. And there's many an amazing story behind all of these beautiful crosses here. And as in 2009, it celebrated here the 100th anniversary of the sisters being here in Drishane. So on that occasion there were huge numbers arrived here, and over each particular cross was placed a beautiful red rose, and remembering all the different sisters. And there was a beautiful ceremony here, prayerful ceremony, and then everyone went down to Drishane itself, where at this particular point the sisters would have left by 2009. The sisters would have left Drishane around 1992, but nonetheless everyone came back for this special occasion. But the other very interesting thing here is that all of the actual graves here would be for the sisters, but there is one gentleman given the privilege of blessed is he amongst women.
Who was he,
And
Seán?
and I had the great privilege of knowing this man, and his name was Michael McGrath, and he died at the age of 76. And Michael was in fact the very dedicated gardener here, and he kept the place in such immaculate condition, like with a whole team of people. But he was the key person to basically coordinate all the beautiful landscaping and so on. And everyone used just be so enthralled by looking at the way the gardens were kept. And once every 2 years there was a garden fete. And that was such a treasured memory for all of us. I mean, hundreds and hundreds, well actually thousands of people used to come here, and very often you'd have displays like parachuting, and I think the last person that was here to open the actual garden fete on the day was a lady called B.B. Baskin, who at that time was a very, very important television personality.
Right,
exactly.
okay.
But special, wonderful memories here, and there are many of these wonderful nuns that we have known over the years from many different parts of the world, and so it's
buried in this lovely quiet.
yes, indeed, and a very, very prayerful and beautiful section here.
Maurice, before we leave the nuns section of the graveyard, you were saying something about this statue here.
The statue was created by Seamus Murphy, the famous Cork sculptor.
Okay. All right.
I think it's 1964. Is this
54. I can just see it there
54, and it was in the Drishane Convent originally, and when they left Drishane, they moved it to their premises in the Killarney Road in Millstreet, and recently they sold that property, and it is now being placed in perpetuity, I suppose, in Drishane.
Because he trained in Duhallow. He was based up in Whelan.
Was he in the famous stone?
He was a young man,
Yeah.
So you wouldn't know where he even got the stone from.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for pointing that out.
Not at all, no. Yeah. And you see, a lot of our church in Millstreet is Mealing stone.
Okay.
Yeah.
That lovely Duhallow.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is, sign on the side.
Yeah.
So there's the old graveyard below.
Yes.
There's the modern.
Yeah, and this is the modern then, really.
We're here then in this quite large burial ground for the sisters.
It is, but there were quite a big congregation in those days.
And they're buried in this way, actually. Oh, so now I see it.
And sideways then as well, below then, you know.
So these headstones here are buried out here.
Here, yeah.
And those headstones there are buried here.
Here, yeah.
Yeah, and there's another line then of sisters being buried.
There is,
between,
the last two
between the
recent
heads.
ones now are there, yeah.
Okay, fab.
Really.
Okay. And look, you can see the individual graves.
You can, actually,
There's
you
little
can.
dips
Different dips,
with
the
the richer grass,
I have a lot of old friends here, actually, you know.
Yeah, we would have known the people.
Some, yeah.